Ethics Commission. Today's meeting is live cablecast on SF.gov TV and live streamed online at sfgovtv.org/ethicslive. For public comment, members of the public may attend in person or may participate by phone or on the WebEx platform as explained in our agenda document. Clerk, can you please explain how remote public comment will be handled?
Certainly. Public comment will be available on each item on this agenda. Each member of the public will be allowed 3 minutes to speak. For those attending in person, opportunities to speak during the public comment period will be made available here in room 400 at City Hall. For those attending remotely, the public comment period can also be provided via phone by calling 1-415-655-0001 with access code 2660-989-6861, followed by the pound sign, and then press pound again to join as an attendee. When your item of interest comes up, please press *3 to raise your hand to be added to the public comment line. Public comment is also available via the WebEx client application. Use the WebEx link on the agenda to connect and press the raise hand button to be added to the public comment line. For details instructions on how to interact with the telephone system or WebEx client, please refer to the public comment section of the agenda document for this meeting. Public comment may also be submitted in writing and will be shared with the Commission after this meeting has been concluded and will be included as part of the official meeting file. Written comments should be sent to ethics.commission@sfgov.org. Members of the public who attend Commission meetings, including remote attendance, are also expected to behave responsibly and respectfully. During public comment, please address your comments to the Commission as a whole and not to an individual member. People who engage in name-calling, shouting, interruptions, foul language, or other distracting behavior may be excluded from participation.
Thank you, Clerk. I now call the meeting to order. Clerk, will you please call the roll under item 1?
Certainly. Commissioner Ye?
Here.
Commissioner Tsai?
Here.
Commissioner Salahi?
Here.
Commissioner Commissioner Flores-Fang?
Here.
And Chair Flores-Fang, with 4 present, you have a quorum.
That I call agenda item 2, general public comment. Anyone in the room who would like to offer public comment? Clerk, can you please check the queue?
Chair Flores-Fang, we have 1 caller in the queue. Welcome, caller. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Your 3 minutes.
Sullivan.
Your 3 minutes start now.
Your agenda is improperly notified. You are missing the start time in your agenda, violating the San Francisco Sunshine Ordinance and the Brown Act. Administrative Code Section 67.7, Agenda Requirements, Regular Meeting C. The agenda shall specify the time and location of a regular meeting and shall be located in a location that is freely accessible to members of the public. The Brown Act, Section 54954.2A1. The agenda shall specify the time and location of a regular meeting and shall be posted in a location that is freely accessible to members of the public and on a local agency's internet website, if the local agency has one. Continued conducting of this meeting, discussing and passing anything will be void. Administrative Code Section 4.104A2. Holding meetings open to the public and encouraging the participation of interested persons, except for actions taken at closed sessions. Any action taken at other than a public meeting shall be void. You're also violating the San Francisco Sunshine Ordinance and the Brown Act. Administrative Code Section 67.1A. Government duty is to serve the public, reaching its decisions in full view of the public. Failure to adhere to core principles by not properly notifying the public of a start time, in addition, violates the Brown Act 54950, 54953A, and B3, 54953.2, 54954.3A. Being new to your meeting, I had difficult finding the start time. Your web page states, please see the agenda link below for time and location and content of all commission meetings. The time is not located in this agenda link below. That is not required by law. The law requires a start time on the agenda. The not properly notified agenda means that members of the public may not correctly find the right time for the meeting to participate, observe, and comment. All public access laws and administrative codes are important and serve a purpose. Thank you for your time.
Chair checking to see if there's any more callers. And there are no more callers, Chair.
Thank you. Hearing no further members of the public wishing to speak, and none of my commissioners, I think, wishing to speak at the moment, public comment under item 2 is closed. I now call the consent calendar. And colleagues, as noted on the agenda, there will be no separate discussion unless a request is made by a commission member or member of the public in attendance on one of these items, in which event the matter will be removed from the consent calendar and considered as a separate item. Does any commissioner wish to speak on any of the consent calendar items separately? Anyone from the public?
Chair checking to see if there's any callers in the queue. And there are no callers.
Okay, do I have a motion to adopt the consent calendar?
Just a quick question regarding the public commenter's observation that the agenda packet didn't include the time. Do we need input from the city attorney about whether that's
I'd like to look at that for just a moment, if I may.
okay? All right. Should we withhold action until we have confirmed?
Yeah, if you'll just give me one moment, I can respond on it.
I'm glad you caught that. I wasn't actually able to understand
Yeah, it was-
what the
it was difficult.
concern was.
Chair, I am not aware of anything that specifically addresses the omission of a time from the agenda when it is when the meeting is being held at the regular time. If that's something you'd like me to consult with a colleague on, we could take a quick break and I can get some more information, or if you're comfortable moving forward, that's an option as well.
I mean, I welcome the commissioner's thoughts, but I wonder if causing further delay is actually beneficial if the person who claims to be prejudiced is actually listening in now. I think that I mean, do you think it'll take long? I mean, I think 5 minutes is about right.
If you'd like to take 5 minutes, I can.
That seems
confirm for you.
fine.
All right.
I'm happy to do that.
SF Gov TV, San Francisco Government Television.
Chair Flores Fang, we are ready to resume.
Thank you. Before we proceed with the consent calendar, which is what the agenda item that we were up to next before we went on break, I wanted to address the prior caller's concern that the meeting time wasn't posted on versions of the agenda. I've conferred with the Deputy City Attorney, and we've concluded that notwithstanding that Scrivener's error, there has been adequate notice of today's meeting through other means. For example, the website still notes the meeting time. The actual print copy, for example, if someone were to see this agenda at a library, for example, that print copy says that it's a regular meeting. The public understands and knows that our regular meeting time is 10 a.m. It says so in our bylaws. This is something that is common knowledge at this point. And so at this point, we do feel comfortable proceeding, and we apologize for the error, and we never want to, we don't want to disincentivize folks from joining us at these meetings. It's very important to hear public comment and for the public to be involved. So we will be more careful moving forward and hope this doesn't happen again. So thanks for your understanding. We will now move on to the consent calendar. I think I had already shared that unless my fellow commissioners or a member of the public would like to remove an item from the consent calendar, we will proceed with a motion to approve the entirety of the consent calendar. We didn't hear public comment then, and I didn't hear comment from my fellow commissioners, but I'm happy to open that up again. No one in the room. Anyone in the queue?
Chair Flores Fang, checking to see if there's any callers in the queue. And there are no callers.
Okay. Any commissioners? Okay. Do I hear a motion to adopt the consent calendar?
So moved.
I'll second that.
No further discussion. Do we call the roll? And then I.
Yes, ma'am. On the motion to adopt the consent calendar, Commissioner Ye,
Aye.
Commissioner Sai,
Aye.
Commissioner Salahi,
Aye.
and Chair Flores Fang.
Aye.
And with 4 votes in the affirmative, the motion passes.
Opposed. We now move on to agenda item 6. This is discussion and possible action on proposed amendments to the Ethics Commission's enforcement regulations. We'll now hear from Director of Enforcement, BC Matthews, to help introduce this item. Good afternoon, BC. Good morning.
Thank you, Chair Flores Fang. Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, my name is BC Matthews, Director of Enforcement. So I'm just here to follow up on the discussion that we had at the last meeting, and with the hope that we can proceed and hopefully get your vote and adoption of the recommendations that we're making. I'm happy to go through the presentation, the entire thing, or specific areas that you'd like me to. However you'd like me to proceed, I am more than happy to do so.
I mean, I think we'll have specific questions, but I think it would be helpful to have a robust overview of what it is that we're going to be.
Sounds good. Okay, let's do it. Okay. All right. So I have my colleague Jeff online who will be helping with the slides. I'm just going to have him pull it up and go to slide 2. Jeff, your screen is showing the speaker screen, but sorry. We'll just give a minute to get it sorted. But anyway, while he's getting that ready, the purpose of this project, like I mentioned last time, is to, again, review our enforcement regulations and identify areas of ambiguity and inconsistencies that require clarification, and to adopt changes to the regulations that will strengthen and ensure a fair and more efficient enforcement process. And that work included conducting best practice research across peer enforcement agencies, consulting with the City Attorney's Office, and engaging interested parties to seek their input and incorporate relevant feedback. I can go over the, give you just a quick overview. of the historical layout of our enforcement regs. The regs were originally implemented on July 5th, 1997, and most recently updated on March 19th, 2018. Since then, the Enforcement Division has expanded in both size and capacity, and in recent years, we've seen a growing number of cases proceed through our process, our probable cause process, and with all of the work that has been happening, we've determined that it's just important to revisit these revisions, and that's why we're here. So I'm going to skip over to slide 6 because we went through the introductions the last time. I just don't want to belabor all of that. So going to the heart of the recommendations. So for this slide, currently the enforcement regs do not provide an extension if a deadline falls on a weekend or a holiday. So this recommendation just provides for that, again, just for due process reasons. And, you know, this is pretty standard in legal proceedings. So that's what this is about. Any questions? Okay. And then next slide. So Jeff, we're just going to go through each slide. You can just keep the presentation up. Okay. So for this one, we discussed this a little bit last time, and I just wanted to, Chair Frank wasn't here the last time, but just to clarify, this isn't a new addition to the enforcement regs. This good cause provision actually currently exists, but in a later section, in the late filing section. So we're proposing to move this section up to under the definitions section because other parts of the enforcement regulations also reference good cause. The only change that we made since then and that we're proposing to be adopted is really in response to the comment that you had, Commissioner Salahi, where you thought that it may be the requirements to prove good cause are just a little maybe too strict. So rather than saying consists of, we changed it to includes just to make it, broader and more expansive. So hopefully that addresses that concern. Okay, slide 8. All right, so this one is pretty straightforward, just reorganization of this complete withdrawal process and renaming it to complaint withdrawal rather than withdrawal complaint. Nothing really substantive here. Slide 9. Okay, so for slide 9, this revision aligns the enforcement regulations, the enforcement regs with staff's long-term practice of submitting quarterly enforcement report to the commission rather than monthly. Also, regarding the whistleblower retaliation report, we've just in practice that report is subsumed within the quarterly report that comes before you. There's no practical reason to have a separate one. And so we're just, again, aligning the provisions with our actual practice. All right, so slide 10. All right, so the proposed amendment here would confer on the commission the ability to reopen cases upon discovery of new material facts or evidence, even though the cases were dismissed or closed. The ability to reopen cases by the commission would still be limited by certain parameters and would also be subject to the 4-year statutes of limitations. Here, at the last meeting, there was a public comment about having clarity on who would have that authority to reopen cases, and we included language in that last paragraph that essentially makes it clear that it would be the Director of Enforcement, me, as is in all other cases that come before our commission. Okay. Slide 11. this one is a new addition to the enforcement regs, if adopted. This would allow the Commission to bring a charge for withholding under sections 1.170F, 2.136A, and 3.240A of the Campaign and Governmental Conduct Code. Those provisions essentially prohibit withholding of information or providing misleading information, right? Those are already contained within the code, and we're essentially proposing to write that language into the enforcement regs just to clarify that that the staff would be able to use that evidence, to demonstrate a failure to cooperate with our investigation.
I have a question regarding that. Do we want to make it more clear that it's purposeful concealment versus and withholding, because sometimes people might have accidentally withheld information?
Right. We could. Let me just give me 1 second. The plan would be to mirror the language that's already in the code. So for each of those sections, and let me just quickly take a look. If the language in the code requires the proof of intent, then we would follow that. Kathy, maybe I'll defer to you.
Yeah, I mean, nothing here could offset what's required by the
exactly.
code. And so if there are additional things, that said, if you do want to propose an amendment or for us to look into it further, we can certainly make sure that this reflects all of those. But
that's right.
The bottom line is this could never reduce protections beyond what's required in the code.
Right. Right, like Kathy said, if you have specific language recommendations, we could look into that further.
I have a question about the second part of that paragraph regarding, excuse me, failure to fully comply with a subpoena or subpoena ducis tecum. It's kind of in response to some of the public comment, but also I remember this was an issue with the Paul Taylor, I believe, enforcement proceeding. Just whether there's a view from the staff whether serving objections is compliance with a statute, or whether that would be viewed as something that you could bring withholding charges against.
Parties have a right to object to a request for, or even to subpoenas, right? You can file a motion to squash, sorry. Right, so that procedurally is not considered failure to respond or withholding, and we wouldn't make that argument. Or if we did, they would have every right to, argue against that.
Okay. Thank you.
And Director Ford.
For the record, Pat Ford, Executive Director. I think we would probably just want to make sure they were in good faith.
Right.
We've had some
That's right.
objections that on their face don't pass muster, and I think we'd probably push back and still maybe try and bring a withholding charge in those instances if we thought they weren't in good faith.
Do you think it would be helpful to spell something like that out in this paragraph, or is that something that's better? Is that?
I don't know. I'd probably defer to Director of Enforcement on that question.
That's helpful feedback. We can. I mean, if that's your proposal, I'm open to it. I think it's clear, and again, like I said, I think it's generally understood, but I'm open to that feedback. If we think it's, I think as written, this is sufficient, but I'll defer to your final vote on this.
I understand your sentiment, because I do think it comes up time and time again that a person bringing a claim would have, drafted some sort of objections or some sort of a letter.
Right.
And so if you don't think that including that clarity would incentivize people to submit frivolous responses to avoid a claim of withholding, then I think we should try and craft language that would not, encourage such, that would make clear that a frivolous submission is insufficient, but that a credible objection citing something substantive and we can think about what that might be would be sufficient, or would be a response. Because I know what you're saying, where it's like, yeah, people can bring a motion to quash, like it's obvious, but people who are not lawyers maybe that's not as clear. And I know that you also have a legal background, so I think it could be obvious to some but not others. So I'm happy to think about some language on that.
Okay.
And then I recall the staff's kind of countervailing concern being our hands are kind of tied in enforcing a subpoena. If we get bad faith objections, then it's got to be, if I remember correctly, referred out to the city attorney's office, which may have many other reasons why they can or can't pursue those. So we definitely don't want to incentivize people to be serving bad faith objections, and that being a way to get around the investigation power and of the commission. But and maybe good faith is too generous of a standard, so I don't know what the right standard is there to make sure that people are responding and not doing things that are inappropriate or unfounded or frivolous to try to get around this, because in the Taylor matter we got some frivolous objections there.
Okay, that's definitely helpful. Okay, all right, we'll move forward, slide 12.
Sorry, Dad, just to,
no, that's fine.
In case it's helpful, I personally was thinking something very simple and short along the lines of service of objections that are frivolous or in bad faith or does not constitute compliance with a subpoena. But I defer to staff in formulating exactly how you think that should be.
Okay. Thank you so much. It's really helpful.
That way you don't define, you just define what's not.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so slide 12, this is proposed current section 5D regarding confidentiality. And this one would just clarify that all investigative records and are confidential and will be deemed so unless they're introduced as evidence for an administrative hearing, which is when the matter becomes public. So the current way it's written sort of appears to deem all evidence that's obtained prior to a probable cause determination as confidential, which isn't really the case, and it's not our practice, right? So this is just clarifying what's deemed confidential and what can be disclosed later on in the process. Slide 13, if no questions. So this amendment will just relocate the provision regarding place of delivery and, excuse me, and also help clarify any ambiguity and just help reorganize. But the other change that we made, that I mentioned this the last time that we would make this change, and it's reflected in this slide deck that's been shown right now. It's just the gender-neutral language. It changes it from a respondent or his or her committee to a respondent or a respondent's committee. So that's just the other change. We want to make sure that throughout their enforcement regs, we use gender-neutral language. Slide 14. So for this one, this revision moves the current Section 6 to Section 8 below, and we'll go over that later. But also, it aligns the reporting requirement with that I mentioned earlier, the quarterly report. There's a language there, so deleting monthly to quarterly. And let me see what are the substantive changes here. Yeah, that's really the major change here, unless you have any questions about this one. Okay. So it's just reorganization too. All right. slide 15. Okay, the current provision delegates commission authority regarding conducting probable cause conferences to the executive director, right? And allows the executive director to make recommendations regarding PC proceedings. Here, we're recommending that the commission actually delegate authority to make findings of probable cause, either probable cause or no probable cause, rather than recommendations. And we believe that this would help streamline the process. Again, the commission retains the final authority of whether or not a violation has occurred. The PC threshold is really low, and it's just determining whether or not there's reason to believe that a violation has occurred or that the respondent caused the violation. And I mean, there's more within the section that I can talk about, but it looks like Director Ford wants to add something before I continue.
Yeah, I just wanted to contribute to the discussion since this does have to do with the division of authority between the commission and the executive director. I'm comfortable either way. If you would like to keep the current arrangement where all probable cause findings come from me to you in draft form, you have the opportunity to see them, call them before the full commission in closed session, I'm fine with that. So I just want to say that I don't feel very strongly like you need to delegate this to me and not be part of this process. That being said, I would prefer to do basically probable cause purely at the staff level and then have the probable cause determination become public and come before you at that point. But like I said, I'm also fine to keep it as is and glad to have a discussion around that if you want to talk further. But yeah, just wanted to have a conversation with you so you didn't see this and think like, what is the executive director doing? This is, you know, a radical disruption of our arrangement. Part of it is that we also just haven't seen this commission request that.
Right.
So if that's not something you're engaging with and finding to be a meaningful part of the process, our preference would probably be to just not do it anymore. But if that is something that you actually do feel like you like it, even if you're not exercising it frequently right now, we're also happy to keep that there.
And then the other point that I want to add about this is if you do keep the process and one commissioner requests a review, then we have to bring the matter before you where there would have to be discussion, and there's a question about whether or not that process actually violates the Brown Act, because that discussion has to be held in closed session. However, our meetings and these types of cases are supposed to be discussed in public, but because a PC determination hasn't been made, investigations are deemed confidential, and so any discussion regarding the case prior to a PC determination has to be held in confidence. So there's that question as well, and that's one of the reasons why we think to avoid issues, in the future, if we had a case where you wanted to hear it and, there's objections to whether or not you can hear the case in closed session or in public, but, we can't have it in public session because there's no PC determination, there will be that confidentiality conflict there. So it's another reason why we're looking into this and thinking we should probably scrap that process, which is even a much stronger reason, I believe, in addition to just streamlining it. But if you have any questions, this is one that I feel like there are some questions about, and it seems like, it's a little bit of a disruption, but I don't think it's much of a disruption. Like Director Ford said, we've had quite a few PC determinations that have come, that have been sent to you, and you haven't really requested review, haven't, engaged in that process. We believe that things are functioning pretty smoothly, and we can probably just continue and write it into our regs. But again, up to you. Okay. All right, slide 16.
Can we go back to that?
Yes.
I think my view is, yes, I hear you on how these cases have been presented to the commission and the commission hasn't acted on it. I think that's a testament to probably the good work that you guys are doing, but I think we also have to account for situations maybe in the future where there isn't alignment between staff and the commission, and I do think there should be some element of authority retained by the commission to review determinations by the executive director or the director of enforcement. So, for example, in the section about the finding of no probable cause, where it says the executive director makes a determination about probable cause, and I think there's some ambiguity here too, because first it references, this is page 31 of the red line, references the executive director's determination, but then later it starts using the term the commission.
Right, so we've made a correction to that as well. That's something I was going to point out during this presentation, because Commissioner Slahi raised that point earlier, and a correction, that change is going to be included, right? Because it was raised last time, and we said we're going to, that's just a, yeah.
So, I mean, I think my ultimate point is just at every, and I confess I'm a little confused about how this should be read in conjunction with sections 6 and 4F, but I think my ultimate wish is that that final authority rests with the commission to review any decisions, including a finding of no probable cause, that the buck doesn't just stop at the staff level, if that makes sense.
That does make sense.
But we'll never hear of those cases, will we?
It'd be the question about the process for that review, right? And that's kind of where this really gets to, because ultimately you have the authority over our work and to review, and you have the final authority about whether or not, to decide whether or not a violation occurred, which that question will come before you, right? Ultimately, that's a bigger question. So, yes.
Could I just ask a clarifying question? Is it specifically the findings of no probable cause that you're concerned about? Because I think your point might be that if I find there's no probable cause and the commission doesn't have the opportunity to review that and disagree, then the regs say that that case can never proceed to the commission, so it's just
right.
dead.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if I did find probable cause, published it, then we come before you and you disagree, you just don't find a violation.
Right.
So you will, yeah, okay. That's interesting. That's a really good point.
But I don't think we get to see those, right? Because those are confidential proceedings.
Right, where there's no finding of probable cause, I mean, those are closures, right? So that's, well, except if you know, right, that's different. Sorry, I missed.
Through the chair to Director of Enforcement, do the regs provide for notice to the commission after the executive director makes a finding of no probable cause?
The current regs do not.
Okay.
No. It does not. The current regs just say it's final, right? And that's just how it's been written into it. You make that decision, it's done, and it doesn't go through any review process.
Is the primary implication of finding probable cause that you're proceeding to an enforcement hearing after that? Yeah.
A finding of probable cause, yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But it's not like it unlocks new investigatory powers or arrest or search warrant, like it would in a criminal. Yeah, so.
No.
The only thing is the case becomes public, right? That's the big implication. It becomes public, and now we go to a hearing or we settle, but it is now public.
The primary implication for the public is if you are recommending finding a probable cause and the commission disagrees for some reason with that, which hasn't happened in
right.
Yeah.
And ultimately, if you disagree, that means you don't think a violation has occurred, right? Which is a discussion that will happen when it comes before you. But I see the concern about the publicity of the case. Probably, I think that's where your concern really lies.
Yeah, my concern is, and some of this may stem from my ignorance, but my concern is a situation where we do not have staff who are so diligent and good at their work and make a determination of no probable cause, and it just, to commission members just seems wrong. I would like a mechanism.
But to also review the finding of no probable cause?
I think so.
Interesting.
volume of like what exactly we'd be reviewing, because I think that opens, and I understand that, and I since I've been on the commission, this is how it has worked, but I want to know the channel, like what that opens up for us.
Right. I mean, I would say for the most part, in my experience, and I think in the history of the commission, staff has been aligned with all of the investigative steps that go on, and by the time a case comes before the executive director for review, it's pretty tight where unless we miss something and respondent introduces something new during the PC hearing, that there just hasn't been, I'm not aware there's been a case where it's gone through that process and there's been a finding of no probable cause. So I'm not really sure how, it's just really rare. So I'm not sure I can even answer that.
When you find no probable cause, that still shows up in the closed case report for us eventually, right, quarterly?
Okay. I wanted, through the chair, was going to ask that same question, if maybe that's the solution here, that we roll those together and that findings of no probable cause have to be reported on a quarterly basis, and that's a mechanism for review at that point. Just
right.
like you can for closures and dismissals, there's that same mechanism.
No, so that would be what would happen, because we would consider that on our end. We'd have to close it in some way and report that. So you will get a report on that for sure as part of the closure dismissal notice, right? No question. You always will. Whatever cases, there's no case that happens or that goes through our process that you don't get some form of report on, either publicly or through that. So yes, just to clarify.
Yeah,
sorry.
That's what I had in mind. Was I know I've seen maybe only one or two of these since I've joined the commission, but those reports, I want to ensure that there's a mechanism for the commission to review it. If the commission takes no action, which
right.
it probably doesn't in all the cases at the moment, that's fine. But I want to ensure that there's a mechanism
right.
To act on it.
For sure. For sure.
And can we discuss the next step? I mean, I know we're exploring this process, but once we receive that report, because I've received many reports, you guys have said this is what we've done, this is what we've closed, and we've celebrated that. But once, if we do review and we say, here are the three that we think maybe have to be reopened or maybe reinvestigated. I know we have some amendments about continuing investigations or reopening investigations. What would be the process for reopening something that the staff closed?
We would have to discuss that, but keeping in mind that the matter would be confidential at the time, right? So we can't have a public discussion on that. I would imagine that whatever the questions that the commissioner who has a question about would direct that to the executive director, and staff would do a further review. But again, would have to go back and really review that, but I imagine that would be the process, whatever specific questions that they are on that case.
I think we can definitely put this together. I'm trying to sketch it out right now. It might be beyond the scope of what we can do during this meeting. I think I have the amendment about frivolous or objections not in good faith. I think that one I feel pretty good about. I don't want to consult with city attorney. This one might be have a few too many moving pieces to do in real time today, but I will try, and we'll see where I get.
Yeah. I also just want to sort of give you a little bit of a, I guess, historical overview of how the case closures or investigations works, right, with the no PC determinations. So, and this is how we write the reports now, really. There's no substantive impact or change, but basically all of the cases that are closed are essentially a finding of no PC, right? Essentially a finding that there's no reason to believe a violation have occurred. They just don't get to the PC process, if that makes sense. So on staff level, so those get closed. They don't go to Director Ford. We don't make a recommendation where we then ask him to find a PC. So technically, you already have all of the closures that come before you are technically a finding of no PC, if that makes sense. But I think maybe just the scrutiny is a little heightened because we're making a recommendation that Director Ford should find PC, and then he's reviewing all of the evidence. At this point, he's actually seen more of the case, right, and all of the evidence that we're presenting, and making his assessment and making that finding. So it's maybe at that point that, so you would have to, I think, also distinguish in the report that will come to you, right, that it's gone through the steps. And
I don't want to monopolize the time on this, so just a quick clarifying question. So am I right that the commission gets hundreds, thousands of complaints? A subset of that goes to Director Ford, and then are those only the subset that goes to Director Ford the ones that are listed in the report that we get?
No, all are listed.
All of them?
Yes,
Okay.
all of them are listed, yes.
Okay.
That don't settle or go to hearing.
Okay, so every complaint that the staff declined to act on is in that report that is submitted to us?
That's correct.
Okay, so I guess my suggestion is that, I agree with Director Ford that this is probably a longer conversation that we don't need to settle today, but I would like to see ensure that the commission does not tie its own hands in its ability to look at every matter,
For sure.
especially if it disagrees with staff's recommendation.
For sure, and that's definitely not the intention. But no, this is helpful.
The only thing I'd add is that I imagine that our review, because it's confidential, and it wouldn't be, like, if it's not in closed session, we would have to do our review individually, or at least not in quorum, to avoid any
That's right.
Brown Act or any.
Potentially, but we would have to research that.
That's right, unless it's part of a properly closed session, and that's
Okay.
something that we would have to examine a little bit more closely. Unless it's in that limited closed session universe, yes, and you would not be able to meet in a quorum to discuss.
Discuss process maybe at another hearing or once we have this fleshed out, because I think that having a closed hearing or having a closed session, once we agree that there are like a number of closed cases that we want to discuss, might be the best path forward. That way we streamline the process that we're discussing to the extent we want to proceed with this.
Okay. Could I ask a few clarifying questions, though, just so we can help put together something that might work? Would the commission want the respondents to participate in that kind of closed session where you're actually pushing back against the staff's finding of no probable cause? Obviously, the respondents would want to participate in one where you're considering ratifying probable cause. The respondents would be there saying, no, there's no probable cause. Would you want to see the respondents in a situation where we're saying there's no probable cause? Presumably, the respondents agree with the executive director. So would you want to see them, or would you just want to have a conversation with the executive director and the enforcement staff? And I'm asking because the existing language about review of probable cause determinations in closed session includes a lot of language about how the respondents participate. And I just wonder if that makes sense in this context, and if you have feelings about that, because that'll affect how we draft this language.
Is it correct that you only proceed to a probable cause if you haven't been able to reach a stipulation with respondent?
Correct.
Okay, so presumably there will always be a disagreement about whether there's a probable cause if you're going to that stage with the respondents.
Yeah, presumably the respondent would be trying to defeat the finding of probable cause, even if perhaps they acknowledge some responsibility in the matter. They would usually try to fight it anyway.
Yeah. I didn't mean to jump in on that one, but I have a couple thoughts on that. I personally don't think there's a need for an adversarial probable cause process because we have that in the full merits. I think the point of probable cause is just to make sure that a neutral person or body that isn't actually doing the prosecution piece of it, investigation piece of it, is reviewing whatever those findings are and agrees that there's something there to justify proceeding. I personally don't feel very strongly, just given my experience on the commission so far, about whether it's delegated to the ED or it's a recommendation that's made to us that we then have the opportunity to review. It seems like the public comment concerns were not so much about under-enforcement as they were about over-enforcement, potential over-enforcement for the respondents, and they made some claims, like CPAA's submission made some claims about how this practice may be different from other bodies, which didn't seem particularly different from what our practice is, because ED is not involved in the investigations, correct?
That's correct.
Right, yeah. So there's that neutrality there potentially built in from what the enforcement staff is doing. So that's my gut reaction, but I don't feel strongly about one way or the other.
Okay.
Yeah.
I presume the respondent would probably appear at that kind of proceeding and say, yes, we agree. There's no probable cause. I don't know if they would meaningfully contribute to it in any way.
Right. But we have that adversarial process at a merits hearing if we...
Correct. Another question, which is, what would you envision to be the right number of commissioners to trigger a review of a finding of no probable cause? Right now in the regs, to trigger a review of a finding of probable cause, any commissioner, just one. Would you like to keep that same threshold for reviewing findings of no probable cause, or would you like to see maybe 2 commissioners? I don't know if you have feelings about that, because we can draft it. We can also present you with options. That's an easy one to fix in the next meeting, but just wanted to take your temperature. Okay, so just one. Okay, and the last question is, should we draft language to review both findings of probable cause and findings of no probable cause, or is your focus more just on those findings of no probable cause, since that's the situation where right now there is no way to revive, essentially, those cases? Is that what we're talking about, or are you looking at keeping the review mechanism in place both for findings of probable cause and findings of no probable cause?
My view is for findings of probable cause, we go to a merits hearing if that's where we go, and that will suss things out. So I think it's the findings of no probable cause that sort of stuck out at me a little bit, because I wanted to make sure that that wasn't the end of the road.
Okay. All right. This gives us very good guidance, so we can definitely draft this. I probably can't make it happen right now because I want to make sure I get it right, but I think we can definitely put it together.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
Thanks for raising that point.
And I'm going to ask my clarifying question. So are there still any questions about our current recommendation? Sounds like you're saying you're comfortable with the recommendation regarding the finding of probable cause, where we skip the ratification process, but maybe instead adopt that ratification process for if the ED finds no probable cause.
No probable cause.
Just switch there. Does that make
You're
sense?
saying keeping things consistent, keeping the current process for what we have
For no probable cause, but eliminating it as we're proposing for finding no probable cause.
Right.
Right.
Like, yes, proceeding with what we discussed prior to this.
Okay.
Okay. I've got all
Are
the
we on the
notes.
same page?
Yep. I've got all the notes here. So
Okay.
I think we got it. We can put it
All
together.
right, I got it, but I want to make sure everybody
Got it.
understands
No,
it the way I
it's
do.
true. Thank
Okay.
you.
This isn't the last
No, it's
chance
not.
to discuss it too. We just want to put something together that we think tracks where you are, and then obviously we can
Yeah.
refine it at the next meeting.
Okay. I'm so glad we're having this conversation. I know, slide 15 of 60 or something, but we'll try to go fast. I highlighted certain portions that I knew we would have to discuss, and this is one of them. So
I mean, no need to rush. I think this is important, and to
Yeah.
the extent we have to move it to the next hearing or continue, we can do that too.
Okay. So, I mean, all of Section 7 really is a discussion that we just had about the delegation of authority to the ED and the ratification. So, slide 15 here, the language is just essentially making that clear. Nothing substantive. So if we accept the recommendation, then this language will go into effect. 16. I mean, that part of Section 7, I should say. Slide 16, this is just good cause capitalization for both, because we're defining good cause.
It's a defined term
earlier
now.
on, right, so defined term. Slide 17, changing that gender neutral language, taking that out. Slide 18. Again, aligning the changes here with the recommendation to allow the executive director make a finding rather than recommend a finding. And then down below that, let me look at my notes here because I want to make sure that I explain this. Okay. Yeah, this is just, again, aligning that language. And, okay, any questions about this one? Okay. Slide 20. Okay, so this one is new. This is a delegation. Okay, sorry, let's go back to slide 19 real quick. I think it'll help understand. Sorry. This one. Sorry, slide 19. All right, so this one will consolidate current sections 73 and 77 as they concern Commission's finding of no probable cause, the Executive Director's finding of no probable cause, if that's what's adopted. Also, the current provision splits up those, like I said, it consolidates because the current one splits up the provision in relation to the meaning of a finding of no probable cause by the Commission and finality of a matter. So this proposal will sort of clarify that misalignment. And also, the current provision does not clearly describe the steps, we just discussed this really, the steps that would follow after the Commission's issuance of a no probable cause. We'll take all of the discussions that we just had into consideration for, I think this is a section where that correction or a revision will be made to align your recommendation. So slide 19.
And sorry, just for the record, I think the red line in the hard copy packet we got might have been an old one, so that's why I raised the issue about Executive Director versus Commission. So. Right,
yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah, the language was updated. It was noted at the last meeting and freshly updated, so thanks. Slide 20, delegation of preparation of a probable cause report. This one is a new proposal, and it's essentially asking that the ED may delegate the responsibility of preparing a finding of probable cause or no probable cause, whatever that the finding is, the report to the Director of Enforcement, just to streamline the process. That's what this one is about, and just ensure for a more efficient resolution process. Any questions? No. Okay. 21. Same idea, just aligning that language with the recommendation that we're making. 22. Okay, this one just essentially reflects the recommendation that we made to delete the ratification process. But if we're going to adopt this process for finding of no probable cause, we'll just take this language or something similar. But this is just a deletion of that for finding of probable cause. Slide 23. All right, this proposed amendment will bring the regulations in alignment with the Commission's current practice regarding advice. And so that language is just clarifying the effect of an opinion or that's adopted by the Commission or advice that's given by staff. Commissioner Salahi, you did point out some the typos or earlier, but the last meeting, so the sections that's been corrected and they're properly cited too. So thank you for that. Any questions on this one? Okay. This for slide 24, this proposed amendment relocates the provision regarding voluntary dismissal to where we believe it just more appropriately fits within the regs, which is under the probable cause section. It'll just provide better clarity for the workflow of our enforcement process. Excuse me. Slide 25. So this one is reorganizing the regs, so it relocates this provision regarding page limitations here, but then it also, we're recommending a more expansive, page limitation for our briefs, just because we're seeing a lot of cases that we're reviewing are really complex and fact intensive, and the page limitations are just, we could use more room. Obviously, there's also, we're also, writing into that hopefully we wouldn't need more than 40 pages to write our report, but in the event that we do, parties can stipulate to the number of pages, just giving us that discretion. All right, slide 26, per-hearing matters. So a series of changes are proposed here, and those changes really would just help reorganize, but also clarify the pre-hearing process and sort of separate it from the hearing process. The current regs lumps the hearing and pre-hearing, some of the processes together. So we're trying to just make it clear. Like we get to, after PC determination, we get to the pre-hearing process first and before we get to the hearing. So for this one, the current reg is silent on how parties and the commission transition from probable cause determination to hearing process for initiating the pre-hearing matters. Here would establish that process, and it will direct the executive director to place the item on the commission meeting agenda for the determination of who will preside. We already do that in practice, but we just want to make sure that that process is clear in our enforcement regs. Slide 27. So the current regs refer to the pre-hearing officer and hearing officer interchangeably. Again, we want to clarify that pre-hearing refers to before the full hearing on the merits, and hearing officer refers to the officer presiding over the hearing on the merits. So that language, we're making that change throughout the regs. And also this one clearly states the commission's authority to decide preliminary matters or make the delegation to pre-hearing officer. And next slide. This one is not new, so it really shouldn't be redlined. It's just relocated, but no changes were made here. 29. Unless you have questions about that process, but I don't think so. Okay. This one, 2 is not new. We just itemized it. It was sort of hanging by itself in the current regs, and we just labeled it as a subsection within the larger section. Slide 30. Another relocation. Again, this provision regarding discovery and subpoenas It's just reorganization. There's no changes to the current regs in the text of the regs itself.
Add here whatever clarification we had about subpoenas. It's not necessarily, I don't know that it's absolutely necessary, but to the extent we want to be consistent with our representations around subpoenas and their authority or I would offer that as a consideration.
We'll take a look.
Yeah, we'll look at it. I do
Yeah.
see it references section
I think it
5C4,
does,
which is where we would put that additional
Okay.
sentence about good faith.
Great.
So yeah, maybe we'll check it out and see if it's worth repeating
we'll
here,
take
but
a
the
look.
reference might be enough.
We'll take a look. We definitely, throughout this review process, we had that in mind to make sure whatever revisions we're doing will, align them with the current language or whatever's new. So thank you for pointing that out for sure. 31. Oh yeah, that's the one. What you just recommended, actually.
Great.
Yes, I knew it was somewhere. It's just a standalone. Thank you. Okay. 32. This one is straightforward. Like I mentioned earlier, just aligning the language, making sure, clarifying the next steps following the determination on preliminary matters by the hearing officer. This is just a clarifying language that's amended. 33. Okay. For this one, under the current regs, parties may request a consideration of preliminary matters, and that a matter a matter may be considered by a single assigned commissioner. That's what the current regs provide, but this provision introduces a new process that allows parties to request a review of any procedural ruling or determination if the preliminary matters were assigned to a single commissioner. It's kind of the ratification discussion that we just had about the PC process. Here, there's not a provision for a review if one single commissioner, presided over preliminary matters and either of the parties had objections to the findings. So we're making this recommendation that essentially we have a review process. In this case, there's no confidentiality concerns because the matter is already public, right? And so that's what this recommendation is really about. And the process for doing that. Any questions on this one? Because it's new, but I'm hoping that, again, just to make sure that everybody ensure due process for parties, right? Okay. Commissioner, is this one good? It's a good recommendation for you. just kidding. Okay, 34. Hearing on merits. Delegation to hearing officer. So this proposed amendment sets the stage for the hearing on merits and clarifies how the commission may proceed with delegation of hearing officer and who may serve as a hearing officer. Part of this section was previously located in the pre-hearing section, and like I mentioned earlier, we're trying to separate and make clear that those are two separate stages of the hearing process. And so it just makes more sense to relocate this. This here. And next slide, 35.
I do want to pause here and just say that maybe in the spirit of time, if the commissioners have any specific questions about some of the proposed amendments, maybe we can do a little bit of jumping around. I think that our discussions have been very productive to now, but I want to make sure that the commissioners have time to ask specific questions.
One thing that I just want to point real quick, just the next slide, and then, yes, we can do what you've just proposed, because I think everything else is pretty straightforward, to be honest.
Yeah,
And
I
for the
agree with you.
SOTIF issue, we've discussed that.
I agree.
Yeah.
And that's why I proposed it. Everything
Right.
else seems minute.
Right, so for this one, the documents that you have with you still say 30, but our proposal is to extend the time, the notice period to 60 days, but the language still read 30. So I'm just pointing that out, that it is 60. Yeah.
Okay.
Or it just wasn't updated on time before it was posted, so. Okay.
Just had a very tiny point, and I only even noticed it because it's something that has affected me before, but Section 10, the hearing on the merits, where it says that the hearing can be assigned to be heard by a licensed attorney in the state of California. I was wondering, A, is there any specific reason why it has to be someone barred in California, but also I think there's some ambiguity in the language in that it says licensed attorney in the state of California, where I think you mean an attorney licensed by the state of California.
We can make that correction. That language currently exists. That was just cut and paste from the current, but I like that. We can make that change. It makes sense. But regarding why in the state of California, Director Ford, do you want to opine on that?
I think before making a change to broaden it, we might want to just confer with the city attorney's office as to whether or not that constitutes practice of law. Because we just wouldn't want to set up a UPL situation. So.
I'm not really.
We'll check and see, because maybe we have competent attorneys in the area who happen to be licensed out of state, and you might want to use them at some point. So we'll run it down.
All right, that's not new change we're recommending, so I haven't really researched that provision.
And we can work with you on that.
Okay, awesome. All right, if there are other areas you have questions about, I'm more than happy to answer. But I want to thank you for your time. This has been really helpful for us.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
Chair Flores-Feng, checking to see if there's any callers in the queue. And there are no callers in the queue.
Do the commissioners have any additional comments? No. Okay. Given the work that we have left to do on some of the language and some of the corrections that have to be made, I would make a motion to defer ruling on these or deciding to implement these today to a next meeting after we can see the language that the staff presents to us. So my motion would be to defer moving on this to the next meeting.
I'll second.
On the motion to defer the item, Commissioner Ye?
Aye.
Commissioner Sai?
Aye.
Vice Chair Salahi?
Aye.
Chair Flores-Feng?
Aye.
With 4 votes in the affirmative, the motion passes.
We now close item 6. I now call agenda item 7, discussion of legislation related to Ethics Commission streamlining project. And welcome, Mr. Canning.
Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
One moment, Michael. Chair, there are 2 callers. They did raise their hand late. Do you want to accept?
Sorry, Commissioner Canning. Sorry, Mr. Canning. Please proceed whenever they're ready.
Thank you. Caller number 1, can you hear me? Caller 1, can you hear me?
James Carson from the California Political Attorneys Association. Can you guys hear me?
Wonderful. Your 3 minutes starts now.
Thank you very much. I just want to thank staff and commission for the robust discussion today. I think it's the right decision to defer action on these changes, given the nature of the discussion. We'd also just ask for an additional IP meeting, which was the request ultimately of our letter. We had some specific additional language in our letter around reopening cases and some language to add there that we think would benefit from further clarification by staff. So given the complex nature of these comments and these changes, we think it would be helpful to have commission staff hold an additional IP meeting with the regulated community so we can provide direct feedback to them. And so hopefully the next time that you all consider these changes, we can move forward with getting something adopted that works for all parties involved. So again, we thank you for all the work today and the robust discussion, and we just ask that an additional IP meeting be held so we can have further discussions around these issues. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next caller, can you hear us? Caller, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Your 3 minutes starts now.
Great. David Pilpel, good morning. I'm uncomfortable making these comments today. The Sullivan comments at the beginning of the meeting sorry, may have merit, and my comments now should not be construed to validate this meeting today. I'm open to arguments and evidence if the Brown Act or Sunshine Ordinance complaint is brought to the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force in the future. Notwithstanding that, I agree strongly with the CPAA comments that at least one additional interested persons meeting is needed here. I think that, I don't know what noise that is in the background, but it's very distracting. Okay. I think that providing a confidential draft decision or recommendation to the commission, allowing one or more members to trigger a commission agenda item in either open or closed session on probable cause is reasonable, and that's been the past practice. So I would continue that. Importantly, I think each section of the regulations that involves a decision should have a summary of what decision has been made and provide notice to the complainant where appropriate, to the respondent where appropriate, to the commission and to the public where appropriate, and clarify and document in the regulations whether such communication is a confidential matter. I think one of the concerns that hasn't been surfaced in this discussion is that complainants often wait months, or in some cases in the past years, to know what's happened with a complaint, and providing periodic updates and a final resolution as to what happened with the matter is important here. I wasn't prepared to discuss in great detail the Sunshine Ordinance provisions today. I think you've heard from the task force in the last 2 months on that, and I think we're still very interested in improving the language of the regulations as relates to Sunshine Ordinance matters. I'll leave it at that right now, and I'm happy to follow up with staff if they're interested. Thanks again for listening.
Thank you for your comments. Checking to see if there's any more callers in the queue. And there is one more caller. Caller, can you hear us?
Hello?
Hello. Welcome. Your 3 minutes starts now.
Sullivan. I don't know if the Sunshine Ordinance is supposed to be talked about in this section, because it is in the one of the attachments to this thing. But I want to just say something about the San Francisco City Administrative Code, section 14101, initiatives, part of the city charter. No initiative or declaration of policy shall approved by the voters shall be subject to veto or to amendment or repeal, except by the voters, unless such initiative or declaration of policy shall otherwise provide. The Sunshine Ordinance is a declaration of policy approved by the voters. There's nothing in the Sunshine Ordinance allowing the Ethics Commission to otherwise provide, to veto, to amend, or repeal any part of the Sunshine Ordinance. The Ethics Commission does not have the power to de facto ignore or repeal any policy in the Sunshine Ordinance. The Ethics Commission is required to adhere to all ordinances outside of the city charter. Administrative Code, Section 4102, Boards and Commissions, Powers and Duties 8. Commission is to exercise such powers and duties as shall be prescribed by the Board of Supervisors. The BOS passed the Sunshine Ordinance. Voters amended by initiative. Therefore, the Ethics Commission is required to exercise all other powers and duties prescribed in the Sunshine Ordinance, and not some. The Ethics Commission cannot hold that Section 6734, willful failure, shall be official misconduct, is the only required Sunshine provision with the duty to enforce, nor is it the only willful provision. Sunshine Ordinance 67.35D states any person may institute proceedings for enforcement and penalties under this Act in any court of competence, jurisdiction, or before the Ethics Commission if enforcement action is not taken by the city or state official 40 days after a complaint is filed. Clearly states the Ethics Commission. Action not taken on a complaint and a 40-day deadline establishes willful. It is part of the purpose of AC Section 6735D. Furthermore, AC Section 6735D starts with any person, which means that the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force can institute proceedings for enforcement and penalties under this Act before the Ethics Commission. Any person is not reserved for the public. If you send a complaint to the police chief saying this department is violating a provision and they ignore the complaint for 40 days, that would be willful. The Ethics Commission does not know that know about the Sunshine Ordinance public access law enforcement. The
So your
Ethics
time has
Commission
expired. Thank you for your comments. Chair Flores-Fang checking to see if there's any more callers in the queue. And there are no more callers.
I have a question now about whether I should offer the opportunity to reconsider our motion or whether we proceed, given that I didn't reopen the last action item in order to invite public comment, and so wondering what the next step is.
Even though the action was to take no action, I do recommend that you do hold reopen that and then vote on it again.
Happy to do that. In light of the 3 public comments that we just received, I'd like to reopen item number 6, which was discussion and possible action on proposed amendments to the Ethics Commission's enforcement regulations. I'd like to reopen that and ask my fellow commissioners whether they would consider a motion to defer taking any action on the proposed amendments to the next hearing. That is my proposed motion.
Second.
And on the motion to defer action on item 6, Commissioner Ye?
Aye.
Commissioner Tsai?
Aye.
Commissioner Salahi?
Aye.
And Chair Flores-Fang?
Aye.
And with 4 in the affirmative, the motion passes.
I'll close again item number 6, and we move on to agenda item number 7. Thank you, Mr. Canning. And as a reminder, this is the discussion of legislation related to Ethics Commissions, the Ethics Commission's streamlining project.
Thank you, Commissioners. Today I'll give a brief overview of 2 pieces of legislation that have been drafted in connection with the Commission's current streamlining project. As a reminder, this project is intended to look at various programs and policies administered by the Ethics Commission to determine if they're effective, efficient, adding value to the city, and furthering the mission of the Ethics Commission, and then to enact changes to update and streamline those projects as necessary. Back in June, staff presented findings and recommendations connected with this project to the Commission. Since then, staff have been working with the City Attorney's Office to draft the two pieces of legislation before the Commission today. Staff have also been meeting with members of the Boards of Supervisors and their staffs to discuss these recommendations, as this legislation would need approval from both the Ethics Commission and the Board of Supervisors to be enacted. Today's item is just agendized for discussion so that the Commission can ask questions and provide any feedback to the current legislative drafts. If no major changes are needed after today's meeting, staff anticipate returning next month with finalized language that the Commission could then vote on. To the packet, attachment 1 in today's memo contains 2 tables, one for each ordinance. Each of these tables is organized by code section and describes the changes being made to that section, which is just intended to be a reference tool to help reviewing the legislation. For a quick review, the ordinance in attachment 2 would discontinue the registration and reporting requirements for campaign consultants and instead require these consultants to supply their clients with the information the clients need to fully and completely report their campaign spending through other existing disclosures. It would remove the city's requirement to file a supplemental recusal notification with the Ethics Commission for members of city boards and commissions, but would retain all of the other recusal requirements and processes associated with recusal. This ordinance would also discontinue the disclosure requirement on major developers, and instead, if a developer is paying a nonprofit for lobbyist services, require the developer to provide that lobbyist with the information they would need to register and report under the city's lobbyist chapter. The next ordinance in attachment 3 would streamline how expenditure ceilings apply to candidates by having the ceilings apply consistently to all candidates in a race and establish a process for removing the ceiling in a race based on the spending by third parties and non-participating candidates. This would replace the current process of applying ceilings to candidates individually and then indefinitely raising those ceilings many times throughout the course of an election. Additionally, this ordinance would increase the city's campaign contribution limit from $500 to $1,000 to adjust for inflation, since this limit was first set in the year 2000 and has not been amended since. Note a slight revision since the June meeting. In June, the recommendation was to increase this to $900, but that was based on CPI numbers from last December. Having refreshed those numbers based on April data, the amount would be rounded up to $1,000. In terms of next steps, as stated, staff anticipates being able to provide final language to the Commission for a vote next month. If these ordinances can be approved by both the Ethics Commission and the Board of Supervisors and become operative by the end of the year, staff anticipates being able to implement these changes by the start of 2026 so that they could be in effect for next year's election. With that, thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions or feedback, or if you have specific sections you want to dive into or talk more about, happy to do that as well. And as a reminder, no vote or action is needed today. Thank you.
Thank you. No, it's just helpful, and I recall discussing these at prior meetings, so thank you for that.
Any public comment?
Checking to see if we have any callers in the queue. And Chair Flores-Fang, there are no callers.
Okay. Because there's no action required, I don't need to move. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So we're going to move on to the next agenda item. One second. I'll close agenda item 7. We'll move on to agenda item 8, which is discussion and possible action on items for future meetings. Does any commissioner want to offer an item for a future meeting? Any public comment on the issue?
Checking to see if there's any callers in the queue, and it looks like there's one caller.
Thank you.
Welcome, caller. Can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead. Your 3 minutes begin now.
It's It's David Pilpel again. I raised my hand for item 7. It's really important to wait for several seconds. There's a delay with the software to raise your hand and be recognized. And you're just moving too quickly on recognizing public comment. My comment is related to item 7 and the proposed streamlining project. I don't believe the staff has held any interested persons meetings on this topic. If so, that's not referenced in the memo. This has been talked about at a previous meeting, or at least it was proposed to be. No, it was discussed and then deferred. I think some of this makes sense. I think some of it is problematic. I do not support increasing the contribution limit to $1,000. I think how these various provisions would play out is not entirely clear, and that would be an appropriate topic for an interested persons meeting. To the extent that this reduces the burdens on staff to implement various programs and provisions, I don't know what analysis has been made of the reduction in staff that would correspond to these changes. It seems like not as much staff would be needed to perform tasks to the extent that they are reduced or streamlined, and how taken together all of these changes impact the political process in San Francisco, particularly as relates to campaigns, although there are other provisions related to campaign consultants, recusals, major developers, et cetera, I think is important to understand taken together. And I haven't seen, I've seen this section by section overview, but not a comprehensive and holistic analysis. I think that would be helpful to understand how this would work. Those are my comments at this time, and again, I'm happy to follow up with staff. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Chair Flores-Fang checking to see if there's any more callers in the queue. And there are no callers.
And once again, I don't have to reopen the last agenda item because we didn't move, or should I do so?
You don't need to vote, but I do suggest, just out of abundance of caution, since there was a comment, that you do reopen that item in case any commissioners want to make further comments before closing it.
Okay, I'd now like to call agenda item number 7, which pertains to the discussion of legislation related to the Ethics Commission's streamlining project. I welcome any comments from the commissioners in response to the most recent callers' comments, or anything at all. Hearing no comments from the commissioners, I will open again to public comment, if that's appropriate. And we'll give it a few seconds, and then we'll move on.
Checking to see if there's any callers in the queue. And there are no callers.
Close agenda item 7. And we will move to agenda item 9, given that we just went through agenda item 8, or should we reopen that as well?
Why don't you reopen agenda item 8 just to make sure
We'll reopen agenda item 8. I'm calling agenda item 8, which is discussion and possible action on items for future meetings. Does any commissioner or any member of the public wish to speak on this item? Anyone in the queue, clerk?
Chair Flores-Fang checking to see if there's any callers in the queue.
Okay.
And Chair Floresvang, there are no callers.
Okay, I now close agenda item 8. I now call agenda item 9, additional opportunity for general public comment.
Checking the queue one more time to see if there's any callers in the queue. And Chair Floresvang, there are no more callers.
Okay, thank you. Hearing no further callers, public comment under item 9 is now closed. And I now call agenda item 10, which is adjournment. Thank you. This concludes our August 8th, 2025 meeting of the San Francisco Ethics Commission. Have a good weekend.